Do you know that 73% of customers agree that a bad restroom experience in a restaurant will impact their willingness to return? Torque Sustainable Hygiene Solutions improve operational efficiency for a better guest experience and better business.
Okay, I am here with Kyle Drenon. Kyle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, John.
All right, let's start off. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Kyle Drenon. I'm one of the owners of Supper Co. We are an advertising agency that specializes in the food industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so the one thing that we wanted to talk about was AI.
Yeah.
And I think you have some interesting thoughts in terms of where AI is going from a messaging standpoint.
Yeah.
I think that because the thing, AI is having a massive influence on on how people use the web and how people use the internet and how people use search. And you have some thoughts on that. I would like you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So this is all happening at such a rapid pace. It's like new things come out every day that we learn about. But one of the major things that I'm looking at right now is how AI is changing the way people find brands, restaurant brands, manufacturing brands, all sorts of brands. Previously, people used Google as their primary. I mean, we say Google it all the time. Mm-hmm. It's part of our speech. That is changing a little bit. I mean, people still use Google, but one statistic I saw recently was 58.5% of Google searches now don't result in a click. And that's because the AI overviews that show up, I'm sure everybody at home probably knows this too, have seen this on their own. It pushes everything down, so people don't actually have to go and read things on a website anymore. Mm-hmm. So traffic to websites for restaurants and food service manufacturers is pretty drastically declining right now as we speak. This isn't one of those AI things that's happening off in the future somewhere. Happening right now.
Right.
Yeah.
It is absolutely happening. I can tell you from experience.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, to your point, you do a Google search and you get a summary.
Yeah.
Or you're not going on Google at all. You're using ChatGPT or one of the other one of the other AI programs, or maybe you're using an internal one like we do at Informa.
Right.
And it does the searching for you.
Yeah.
And then it gives you a summary. That's a pretty monumental change.
It is.
But the issue is, how should brands think about this? Like, you're a restaurant operator and you're like, what do I care? Why should they care?
Yeah. I think they should care because the way that people find information is it's the attention economy, right? Google was a way that we could get messages out there and make sure that people found us when they were looking for restaurants near me and things like that. And that's still the case right now. It's not like that's completely gone. But they should care because how they show up in those AI summaries is something that the forward-thinking organizations out there are already studying. And there's companies that are trying to figure out what GEO is, which is generative AI engine optimization, similar to SEO that we all kind of know from the Google days. And so finding a new way of intercepting people's attention is the key. If we can't get it from organic Google search anymore, and we don't really know what's happening with how to show up in generative AI yet, people are still studying that. How can we get in front of them? And the answer to me is pretty plain. One statistic I saw recently was Americans watch 300 billion hours of short-form vertical video every year. TikTok, YouTube, all of that kind of stuff. People are watching that constantly. So to recoup some of the costs or some of the lost traffic that people are seeing from organic Google and Bing searches, spending more time on putting messages out on those platforms that have short video is how it needs to be done.
Yeah. I am pro short video,
yeah,
just for the record.
Yeah.
But I mean, as I think most people know at this particular point, I have a small little, a dumb little fast food minute video series that I started. And I did it for a couple of reasons. Number one, I did it because I didn't know, I've been a big Twitter guy for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
And it's still, frankly, my preferred social media and still ultimately my biggest breach, or at least my biggest engagement is through Twitter. Because it's easy. Because it's like I just type, and that's easy.
Yeah.
And then I just type and it's go, and I'm done, and I can get on with the rest of my day. Whereas video, I have to think about it. Ooh,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yes, I sometimes don't think about what I tweet. Anyway, but like, it oddly, the videos oddly took off, and the reason I did it is to figure out what I was going to do after X,
Yeah.
or whatever happened with Twitter, but also my kids. I have a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old, and it's the 20-year-old who has got a brain for marketing, and he's like, Dad, you need to be on TikTok. And having a teenager tell you should be on TikTok, probably you should listen to it. But that's where the kids are.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's what I'm like. I've got to defend my future, and that's what I think about. You got to defend your future.
Yeah.
Here, because ultimately, ultimately you got to figure out how to reach consumers, and if it's getting a lot harder in these traditional methods, you have got to think differently about how you're doing things.
Right.
And any business needs to do this. Like,
absolutely.
At the end of the day, you have to adapt.
Yeah. And that's what we're seeing with AI across the board. And there's so many things you could talk about with AI and how it impacts restaurants and food service manufacturers and the entire industry. But one of the things we're seeing there is the change is so rapid, and it has this kind of whiplash effect for people, and they want to cling to, we know this works because we've done it in the past, and maybe the results are still okay, like they've just seen little decreases, but it will happen. It is kind of a new industrial revolution, the AI component of what's happening in the industry, not just in customer acquisition and branding and that kind of stuff, but all across different things. And clinging to the past is not going to serve you well, unfortunately. So yeah, the kids often have the first eye for things like that, right? But now TikTok and other platforms like TikTok are pretty much spanning. You and I are not in you and I are not in college anymore, right?
No.
Right.
No.
But we both use TikTok probably every day. I know I do, to look at ads and other things there too. So it's pretty universal at this point, and I really think that's where brands can get an edge until ads come out in platforms like ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity, which is probably going to happen in 2026.
You think so?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the video component.
Yeah.
And before we move on to,
Sure.
because the two real main conversations is, one is how can brands use short form video effectively? Because I think it's really important. Like, and if you look at the most successful restaurant chains in the U.S. right now, or really strong growth chains, they really do this very effectively.
Yeah.
And they've kind of tapped into the consumer who uses TikTok.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing that I do to get inspiration on this myself is you can go to the Meta Ads library on Meta. Just type that into a search engine, or ChatGPT, I guess, right? And it'll send you to the Meta Ads library. They have a transparency policy that allows us to see what other brands are doing. So if you want to see how big restaurant brands are using short form video, you can go there, type their name into it, and it'll show you all the ads they're running. And what you'll see there is things like Fast Food Minute that you were just talking about. It's not a silly show. It's actually exactly what people want. Organic social content on pages has been on drastic decline for years and years and years. NRN, for example, or whatever brand. I won't pick on NRN, but all these brands' pages on social media have a harder time getting people's attention. But Jonathan May's doesn't, because people want to hear from people. It's a more personal experience now in short form video. They want to hear a person telling them what's going on in the industry. Here's the latest thing that's going on. They want to hear that from your personality, from your perspective, not necessarily from a brand, quote unquote, right? So I think it's about that. It's a personal touch. It's personality in the product and in the message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll give you a story a little bit about it kind of backs you up on Fast Food Minute last year.
Yeah.
I did 44 Fast fast food minutes last week.
Yeah.
I did 600 traditional stories for a website. I got almost as many views on those 44, and it's not like I'm the most popular. There is a certain popularity to them that kind of shocks me, and I've been stopped at least 5 times at the show by random people over the fast food minute. Though a guy did talk about my X account on the bus, and I loved him for that. But they got almost as many views from 44 videos as I did from 600 stories on the page.
Yeah.
And to me, and that was just with TikTok.
Yeah.
And I put them everywhere. And to me, the reach and TikTok is an amazing social media platform.
Right.
It is really, really, really good at knowing what you actually want to watch rather than what you admit you're going to watch. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
And so I think that there is an absolute utility in brands. And I mean, you've had Dave's Hot Chicken.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dave. I think 2 brands today that really stand out in terms of this are Dave's Hot Chicken and Crumble Cookies. Both started in 2017, and both immediately started using social media to their advantage and figuring out how to do this. And they're on it constantly. And they don't advertise on traditional media at all.
Yeah.
But they generated an enormous amount of popularity very quickly by doing this.
Right.
So you absolutely can do this for your brand today.
Yeah. And Crumble actually built part of their franchise recruitment for franchisees through TikTok, organic TikTok, talking about the opportunity, what made them special, all of that stuff. Now I think they may have a little bit of harder time because TikTok is trying to monetize through ads. Nearly every social platform is kind of pay to play now,
Right.
which has its benefits and drawbacks. But yeah, I mean, the Crumble story has been amazing in using emerging platforms like TikTok. And you mentioned 44 episodes versus 600 articles. That tracks because 90% of the internet is video content. 90%.
Yeah.
So 9 out of every 10 things that exists on the web is video now. It is how people find what they're looking for. I think another interesting stat here was that on TikTok, 41% of users use TikTok like they use Google. Instead of using Google,
Yeah.
they use it as a search engine. So people are using this stuff to discover new things, be inspired, get ideas. It's an information platform in a way that, has kind of made Google less relevant in some ways, which is wild to say.
It is crazy.
So
I mean, they've
important.
dominated.
Yeah.
They've dominated the internet since the 90s.
Yeah.
Since really shortly after they came out. I mean, they very quickly took over.
Yeah.
In the search business and have been one of the world's most valuable companies based on that.
Yeah.
And now they face a difficult future.
Yeah.
Because because of the AI revolution, and there are all sorts of implications for that.
Yeah. And I mean, Google was this AI revolution. This kind of happened when the internet came out. When email started becoming popular. I mean, I remember that and people not really understanding it, and which sounds funny now, but Google was one of the first ones to go. I see the utility in data. I see the utility in creating systems that talk to one another and the interconnectedness of the web. They were one of the first ones to adopt that. So was Microsoft. So was Meta, and they're some of the biggest companies in the world. And the companies that commit to the emergence of AI like that, they're the ones that are going to be successful. And I think another thing about AI that is really interesting right now is there's this, for a lot of people I talk to about it, there's a component of fear or anxiety around what it's going to do, which is understandable. It is. But if you see it as a way to sharpen yourself rather than something scary that's going to replace you, I think that's where, like I was just mentioning with Google and Microsoft being the first ones to adopt the internet. They could have seen that as a threat and been afraid of it, but they embraced it and innovated with it. And those are the people that are going to be successful with AI as well.
Right. I mean, I always, like, to me, one of the best business success stories of like the last 25 years is Netflix.
Yeah.
And to me, and stay with me for a minute, but like you think about, because you have to see what is coming, and if you want long-term success in any business, you have to try to see what's coming and adapt to it. You know, like a restaurant operator, it doesn't mean you suddenly, if you're selling Asian food, you start selling fried chicken or whatever. But at the end of the day, you got to try to seeing what's coming. And Netflix, essentially took over video rental because Blockbuster, A, had too much debt, and then B, missed an opportunity to buy Netflix.
Right.
And then they almost immediately, very, very quickly started pivoting to streaming video. And they became an amazingly valuable company. And to me, like any restaurant brand has to understand, like you have to see these things coming. And like AI, my biggest concern about AI isn't that AI going to take my job, because I would like to see AI be a smartass on a podcast. But but it's that they're going to make the job irrelevant.
Yeah. One of the analogies, I'm big on analogies. Everybody at supper knows that. So if you're listening, I'm doing another one. But one of the analogies I like to use here, because it just helps me understand it, is two of my favorite movies, right? Or at least one of my favorite movies is Terminator. And then Iron Man is on the other side of that. And I think that's how you can look at AI. You can look at it like Terminator. It's going to come and bring Judgment Day and be really scary. And the sequel might be better, that's one of the only sequels that's better than the original. But instead, I like to think of it as Iron Man, right? It's a suit that we put on that makes us stronger and better, and it's got capabilities that extend what we're able to do. That's what media is supposed to do. I mean, media theory, like an old media theorist, Marshall McLuhan, said that about media. It's literally meant to extend our senses, touch something further away that you can't touch, see something further away that you can't see. And if you think of AI that way, as a component of making yourself better, that you can strap this on and be like, let's go, I can do this even better than I could before, instead of some autonomous, scary Austrian robot is going to come and destroy us. I think that's the mindset that's going to help people win.
Right. So how do all right? So I'm in marketing for a restaurant chain. What do I do to adapt my message in this era of AI on the internet?
Yeah, I think it's about creative testing and getting more messages out there, and speaking the language of the platforms that you're placing on. TikTok has a language. X, Twitter, has a language. It has its own idiosyncrasies, inside jokes that people get on the platform. And that doesn't mean that you have to drop all decorum. If your brand is more buttoned up, you can certainly still do that, and have highly produced content, and it works very well. But I think adapting to the platform and giving people what they want on that platform is key. Don't try and fit a square peg in a round hole with the way that you talk on those platforms.
No.
Keep it short. That's what people want. If it is an ad, they don't want to be on that ad for very long. So one of the things we've done in the past is we work with a C-store chain out of the New England area. And to build their loyalty program, we used a TikTok media campaign. And it was a 6-second video. That's it. 6 seconds. It said, join for this reason, and that's it. And we grew that loyalty program, which was already pretty large. This is a 100+ unit chain, by 75% in about 6 months, just with TikTok.
Yeah.
That's it, with this 6-second ad. Just don't bother people too much. Give them a good reason to bite on whatever it is you're putting out there, and let them get back to what they were doing.
Right. I think that's a really good example that 6 seconds is vital.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, really, really important. Even if you're going to, could you talk about this? Why that 6 seconds is so important?
Yeah. I think it's because our attention spans are, we can talk about this as a societal thing, right? But our attention spans are lower than they have been. We give less credence to, especially ads, because we're inundated with ads. We see ads all the time. So if an ad is going to make an impact on us, it needs to do so within a second.
Mm-hmm.
1 second. I mean, if you think about like old media types like direct mail, I open my mail over the trash. You know, I do, because I get a message from a realtor or something like that. It's going right in there, you know, I'm not moving. So it's about that instant gratification. We all know that's part of these platforms. It's about getting the dopamine. We're dopamine dealers in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So getting that dopamine hit early on, and just shooting straight, getting right to the point.
Yeah.
The communications planning that goes into something like that, the reason it's 6 seconds beyond just that is because we can, using these platforms, we can retarget people or follow them around the web, with certain percentages of video watched, engagement with that video. And that's what makes those campaigns even more successful. Right. So if it's 6 seconds, if they watch 3 seconds of it, we can confirm they've seen us. Yeah. They saw that loyalty program ad. And then we can show it to them again and again and again until ultimately,
right.
You know, yeah. It's a phenomenon called the Baader-Meinhof effect, where, you know, like if you learn a new word, then you see that word everywhere. Like you keep seeing it pop up, or you buy a red car and then you're like, hey, everybody has a red car. That's really what we're trying to create with an ad strategy like that.
Right. You got to get their attention.
Right.
You got to get the attention. You know, once you get their attention, you got to keep them engaged at that point, but you got to get their attention. Those first few seconds to me are if you're doing short form video, those first few seconds are crucial. Yeah. Because they'll just, and I'm an old cable watcher, and I flipped channels, and and I do that on TikTok. And I will not tell you how long I will do that for, but stupid thing is addicting.
Yeah, it is.
But you don't have much time, and that's why I felt that 6 seconds is like super, like really crucial advice.
I think that's a great correlation to a medium of the past, like cable TV, because I remember doing that too. Yeah. But scrolling through channels is that's exactly what you're doing on TikTok, but every show starts at the very beginning, right? So your hook in the beginning, because they already have their finger there, their thumb there, ready to scroll past you. Yeah. They're getting ready to reject you, you know? Right. So if you don't say something in that first few seconds that's compelling, then they're gonna move on. But we get to do that. We get to pull things. Another example of this for us is we've run short form video campaigns that are based on a longer piece of content, like a 3-minute video, and we'll just pull out the best clip, the most engaging thing from the clip, and put it at the very beginning, and then later in the video you see it again. Yeah. But that's kind of how you get you can get people to hang on and hear what you have to say, is pull out the nugget. You know,
I mean, to me, I think the great news, if I'm a restaurant person, the great news about this, people love restaurants. Yeah. And food. I mean, we all eat food, and we all like good food, unless you for some reason don't, but whatever. I mean, we all enjoy going to restaurants, and so to me that means everybody is your audience, and you can, this is a format that you can use very effectively. Look at Chili's.
Oh yeah, that's what I was just thinking. That
look at what Chili's just did. They did 31.6% same-store sales in the first quarter, when their nearest competitor did negative numbers. Yeah. When everybody, literally almost everybody else did even or worse. Like it is what they did, and theirs is, and they'll tell you, I've had the CMO on my podcast just a few weeks ago. and they did it because they took advantage of social media. First, they took advantage of social media. They recognized that consumers were saying on social media that they don't like prices.
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh, look at everybody pulling their cheese. And it took off.
Yeah. I made a video about that.
Really?
Yeah. And my video on TikTok, and my account's not big, was viewed like 700,000 times.
Wow, yeah.
And I was talking about the strategy of that. It was so brilliant. Like, I know they took home some gold and silver plate awards at the IFMA Awards. They took home some Menu Masters awards, and rightfully so, because it was the best marketing move of the year in the restaurant industry for sure, and maybe any industry, because the viral cheese pull thing, the LTO strategy that went into that is, and I don't know if this is true, but I like to imagine that at Chili's headquarters it was like, what if the cheese pull was the LTO? Because it's what if a social component was an LTO? Because that's what it became. And I don't know if that was like from the beginning that was the plan, but it certainly worked out that way. And TikTok was a huge reason that was successful, because Nashville Hot Moss was, yes, it's good. It tastes good. I've had it. It's pretty delicious. But it was more about bringing people back in the restaurant because they wanted to go do it themselves.
Yeah.
They wanted the cheese pull on their own account, right? They wanted to film themselves like the early influencers did on that. So yeah, I mean, the impact of that kind of stuff is
right,
wild.
Yeah, I mean, it was insane.
Yeah,
and at a time when consumers are cutting back. And the thing is, like, I was at Chili's a couple of weeks ago, and I looked. Like, I do this. Like, I looked around at all the tables. Almost all of them were young people.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some families. There were some older people. I would say 60% were Gen Z.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's a bar and grill chain. It's Chili's, for God's sake.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, we hadn't been talking about these guys since, the last time we talked about Chili's this much, we were all at the mall listening to Tiffany. It was just, it was insane.
Yeah.
And they did that because they were paying attention. They're paying attention to what's going on social media.
Yeah.
Hey, you all have to do it. Even if you're a restaurant, you have to pay attention to what's going on in this. This is where your customer is at. They are talking about it, and you have to pay attention.
And it's strategy in motion. That's the beautiful part, because not only did they have the viral cheese pull sensation going on TikTok, they capitalized on that. And I think that's what the best marketers out there do. Is they see an opportunity and they act swiftly. That's another thing that's tough for marketing, especially in large organizations, to be nimble like that. Mm-hmm. Man, it's hard to get approval on things and move it through the bureaucracy of an organization like that. It's difficult. But Chili's then, they have this moment, and then they follow it with a 1-2 punch of value, and take on QSRs with the $10.99 3 for me.
Yeah,
that was just one of the best marketing moves I've ever seen. Yeah. It was incredible.
It was brilliant.
Yeah. And they did. Like, then they started, I think their ads now directly call out the quarter pounder, because they have a quarter pounder right now.
Yeah. They did it with the Big Mac and then the quarter pounder.
Yeah.
And it really is brilliant marketing. And you're right. The thing about the 3 and Me is they've had that on their menu for years.
Yeah.
That was nothing new. And then they just kind of realized, hey, wait a minute. Look at people talking. I could tell you, people were absolutely talking about fast food prices last year.
Yeah.
They still are.
Yeah.
And they recognize people are talking about this, and they realized they had an opening, and they took advantage of it.
Yeah.
And they basically did it twice in 1 year. It was pretty insane.
And they stuck that Nashville Hot Moss in the 3 for me.
Right.
Which was just like, that's incredible. And then they also had the $10.99 meal going on at the same time. And it's just like, that's enough, guys. You guys are killing everybody.
Yeah.
Because it was basically, I mean, in the past 12 months, it's just been pretty much them and
everybody else.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Inevitably, we end up talking about Chili's. Kyle, this was great. I really appreciate you joining me on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Appreciate you having me.
And that should do it for this week's episode of A Deeper Dive, which was edited, as always, by Spoons with some help from our friends at Informa. Artwork by Nico Hines. You may find this and other episodes of the podcast on our website at www.restaurantbusinessonline.com/article/deeper-dive. But please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm Jonathan Major, host and podcast producer. Thank you for listening.
Do you know that 73% of customers agree that a bad restroom experience in a restaurant will impact their willingness to return? Torque's sustainable hygiene solutions improve operational efficiency for a better guest experience and better business.